I'm here today with Colonel Harry Riley, founder of Operation American Spring. Colonel Riley, thank you for allowing us to come in and interview you today.
Thank you, Carl. Very nice to be with you today.
Colonel Riley, could you please give us a brief explanation as to what Operation American Spring is all about?
Operation American Spring came about as I was writing a piece in December because I'd gotten to the point where I was so frustrated that I was just writing a rant. And then I decided that I'd put a mission on top of it. But I was thinking a little bit about the Egyptian Spring. And I recognized what the principle of mass was, how effective it was in Egypt. And I thought, well, if they can do it over there, changing their government twice, then maybe we can do the same thing in the United States of America. Now, the people in Egypt, they didn't have anything behind them to do it. They just simply went to the street. But we are a different situation in the United States of America. We've got the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution behind us. And the Declaration of Independence tells us that we must, if we have a government that becomes overbearing, penalizes us, then we must take action. We must stand up. We must challenge it. And if necessary, we have to change leaders. I'd be quick to say that we're not talking about our government structure. The Founding Fathers left us a solid structure that has served us well for over 230 years. It's the lawless leadership that occupies those positions right now that we have a difficult problem with. They basically have separated themselves from we the people. They no longer pay any attention to the Constitution. We no longer have 3 equal branches of government. The Congress has totally relinquished their responsibility. They no longer pay any attention to their oath. So Congress sits there, they do nothing, and Barack Obama flashes a pen and says, if you don't do what I want, then I'll do it myself. Well, that's illegal. It can't happen. We've got to stand up and we've got to tell them no. That's where this massive, gigantic gathering of we the people must show up. We must convince Congress that we mean what we're going to say, we mean what we want. So there we are. That's the reason we're going. It cannot continue.
Thank you very much. There are many out there who will say it's because of this that happened in 1863, or this that happened in 1933, or this that happened in 1964, or they'll go to one date or another and say, this is why it has happened. This was the reason why it happened. But does it really matter to either one of us why it happened? All that matters is that it did, and that there is a law form, which is the Constitution, that we're trying to get back to. What would you tell people that think we are living in a constitutional republic right now?
Well, the truth of the matter is that there's been a cloud, a darkness that has been descending over our nation for many decades. And we've gotten to the point in the last 5 or 6 years where we've almost come to an eclipse. The darkness has set in to the point that we no longer have lawful government in Washington, D.C. They do what they want to. They change laws. Barack Obama has changed this health care law at least 3 or 4 times without consenting Congress. The Attorney General ignores laws. So when you have a government that pays no attention whatsoever to the Constitution, the laws on the books, they penalize the states. In other words, the states try to do things to take care of their citizens. For instance, Arizona, when they wanted to deal with immigration, they said, well, the federal government can't do it, so we'll pass a law and we'll take care of our people. Well, they did that, but what does the federal government do? They come down with their heel on the head of Arizona, find a liberal judge, and declares Arizona's law unconstitutional. So if the states can't exercise their responsibility under the 10th Amendment, if the federal government is lawless and ignoring the laws, then what are we the people to view that any law is lawful? Anything on the book is lawful. What will happen tomorrow? So I don't think there's any doubt that we have lost the Constitution right now. Maybe there has been a coup, and it's handled by the Congress, the courts, and the administration are simply complicit in doing this, and we're at their whim. We're at their mercy. So the only way we can challenge this is we the people have to stand up, and we all have to go to Washington, D.C. in these gigantic millions and millions of us. Otherwise, they'll treat us just like they have in the past when we go to D.C. They'll look out the window and they'll say, oh, the few of the pests are here again. And we're going to ignore them because they'll go away. Well, this time, we're going to go up there and we're going to stay. Much like the people in Egypt did. They took to the streets by the millions. They stayed there. They stayed there until they got a change in government. And as I said, we have a Declaration of Independence that demands that we do this. We have to stand up. Again, our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, we can't leave this anything but what we have had, what our founders left us, those principles of freedom and liberty that our Creator has given us, not man. So it's up to us. We have to go up there and reestablish, try to begin constitutional restoration. We've lost it. We've got to restore it.
The people that you are looking at having removed from office, Barack Obama, Joe Biden, Eric Holder, Mitch McConnell, John Boehner, Nancy Pelosi, and Harry Reid, they seem to be the center of all of the power that is being wielded in Washington right now, and Congress seems to be totally inept and unable to deal with this in any way, shape, or form. What do you see as the chance of us going up there and affecting the change that is necessary for this country to be turned around?
The key is going to be the turnout. If we do not get millions of Americans in Washington, D.C., showing their resolve to make this happen, then not likely it will happen. It all depends on we the people. Now, if we get millions and millions of people up there, it's going to have an impact just like it did in other places where we the people have stood up. We have a packet that has been presented to every member of Congress. All 535 members have gotten this packet. It's a packet of our Declaration of Revision, or our demands and grievances, some 30-some demands and grievances that we want addressed. They also have articles of impeachment in there that have been prepared by a constitutional lawyer. He says they're provable, they're valid, and there's other documents in that packet that talk about what Operation American Spring is about. So they all have this. Now, our prayer is that there will be a large number of congressmen that will stand up and say, we have to do something about this. If they don't, and if we the people don't show up, then likely the people that we're asking to resign, to step down, they won't do it. So it's all about we the people, how much we feel in our hearts that what's going on is wrong and it has to be changed.
Colonel Riley, you've talked about who we need to see replaced in the government that resides in D.C. And what we'd like to hear is why you feel like these particular players are the ones that we need to focus our attention on.
Well, we believe that in order to actually get back to constitutional law, that there's no way you can start at the state level, because we've seen what happens when the states try to do something. The feds come down and undo it or put their heels on them. The leadership has to be changed. The criminals have to go first. We've got criminals at the federal level. You can look at Harry Reid. The legislature can send over 50 bills. If he doesn't like it, he just says, I'm not going to discuss them. I'm not even going to bring them on the floor of the Senate. Well, when you have a government like that, it's non-functional. And he is acting as a dictator. He's deciding himself instead of allowing the representatives that we send up there, the senators, to make decisions, for committees to meet, to discuss issues. So he's part of the problem. John Boehner's the same thing. We've got Benghazi, we've got Fast and Furious, we've got a lot of other scandals that have gone on, and they just do a circular investigation and nothing ever becomes of it, because there's never any prosecution, any special prosecutor done in order to get some results, to hold people accountable. There is no accountability in government right now. Barack Obama makes a decision, he's going to obey this law, or he's going to use this law, or he's not, or he's going to make a new law. It's total chaos. We have no government in D.C. right now that is constitutional.
It would seem, though, that the American public has been locked into this never-ending discussion, this never-ending debate on one issue or another issue, and all of the issues have at their root the same disease. While we play with symptoms out here, the disease does appear to be centered right there in D.C. So I know that over the years you have been addressing various issues, and as have I. But it seems like all of us who have been addressing these various issues have come almost full circle in the fact that the time for talk is over, long over. The time for action seems to be right now, and you seem to have tapped into that. What are your feelings on that aspect, that people are now coalescing, they're coming together and realizing that the symptoms that they've been discussing are just that, and that the source is up there in Washington?
Yes, I think we've been putting, we've been trying to put Band-Aids on things for decades. And it's gotten to the point now where the whole body is diseased. And, it's almost that the only way you can fix it is with a brain transplant. And I think that's what's going to have to happen in Washington, D.C. It's like an octopus. You can cut the tentacles off, but he just grows another one. And the only way that you really fix it is you hit him dead in the head. You get to the brain. And that's the problem in Washington, D.C., is we have, over at least the last 5 or 6 years, we've sent faxes, we've made phone calls, we've visited Congress, we've screamed at them in town halls, we've been up there on these events in D.C., and they just ignore us. So, we have no choice. If we want to save our nation, if we want the freedom and liberty that our founding fathers, the principles they gave us, then we're going to have to take action. We're going to have to take it into our own hands. That's the only way you can get it done. Because politicians, they take an oath, but their oath doesn't mean the same as a military man or woman when they take their oath. When we take our oath, we put our lives on the line. A politician takes his oath, it just gets him into the trough, gets his nose into a $176,000 a year job as a novice, as entry level. And there is no sense of service anymore. There's no servanthood as we had in the past. Our founders set up our government for people to go to be servants of we the people. Now it's the other way around. The government thinks we're their servants, and they want to take our money and distribute it to somebody who doesn't want to work. That's not the way our system works. We have a capitalist system, not a communist or a socialist system. And you know, it just boggles the mind as to how far we have drifted into a third world nation, the greatest nation on the earth, created by God Himself, and now we are turning it over to somebody in the White House. We don't even know who he is, because everything that he is, he locked up, he won't tell. And the individual is basically creating and becoming a dictator, a tyrant. And it's not about him personally. It's about his actions. It's about his philosophy. It's about who he wants to follow. And we know he's a student of Alinsky and communism, and so there we are. We either have to stand up or we're going to sit down.
So true, so true. And you come at this from the feeling in your gut. You know that something's wrong, and you've known that something's wrong for quite some time now. While others have come at it from a more academic perspective, a lot of research has been going in. A lot of that research you've seen out there, and I know that you're not going into the particulars there, but let it be said that if anybody chooses to and looks at the 10 planks of the Communist Manifesto, you can find that most every one of them is in place right now. And that would lead one to the belief and assumption that we are, in fact, under some sort of communist control right now. And the only reason it's not become evident to the people out there across America is because the media has been complicit in keeping that from them. And it seems like the media has been the common denominator in most of this. So if you, like I, have come to that conclusion, how do we address this? Because the media is going to continue to be on the side of the powers that are currently in place right now. You know that they are staying silent on every one of the important issues that would, if they had done the investigation, would have seen these guys packing a long time ago. How do you deal with the media when it comes to this?
Yeah, the media, they have totally relinquished their objectivity. They used to be the, you know, they'd go out and be the investigator. They'd find the truth, but no more. They're basically an arm of the liberal side. And I think people realize that. Everybody knows it. You hear it all the time. So everybody is starting to rely on the social media. You know, go out to the Facebooks and the blogs and the blog talkers that I've been on from time to time. They're the ones that are seeking the truth and where people find they can rely on. America doesn't rely on truth in media. If I think people of the left or the liberal persuasion, they eat up everything maybe that the mainstream media says. And of course, everything the mainstream media says is exactly what they're fed by the administration. And, you know, Congress, sits and has, again, relinquished their authority as a, if you will, the loyal opposition, particularly in the House of Representatives, where there is an opposition, there should be, but they absolutely have surrendered. They've basically given the administration the keys to whatever it is they want to do. And there's, you know, they'll have investigations, but the administration will say, we're not going to send so-and-so, or we're not going to send these documents or that document. So Congress ends up doing nothing. Nothing gets resolved. That puts our nation in limbo. The American people, we don't know what's going on. Again, laws are ignored. Laws are created in the administration, not in Congress. So it's such a chaotic situation that America we're confused at best. So how we're going to handle it, the only way we can do is we try. We've got to stand up. We've got to assemble in Washington, D.C. on May the 16th. Many people feel this may be the last chance, the last opportunity we have for a peaceful resolution to this, to get back, begin our trip back to constitutional restoration. There's nothing really positive coming out. The Nevada issue out there with the Bundys, there is some hope there in that we saw people standing up, Americans standing up and saying, this is not the way issues are resolved in America, where you have a land management group bring a bunch of thugs out to attack a family, a rancher. Well, America stood up from New Hampshire to Georgia to Texas and assembled out there in a way that they said, you know, we don't believe this is the way to do it, and we're not going to allow it to happen. And as it turned out, they backed down, the thugs. Now, I hope that same attitude is out there for people to come to Washington, D.C. We've got to do the same thing. And we've got to, there was not a shot fired. There was not one person injured. And that's interesting because nothing happened. There was no really critical things done, but Harry Reid called those patriots out there domestic terrorists. At the same time, Nidal Hasan can kill 13 American soldiers and wound 29, and it can be called workplace violence. Or 4 Americans can be killed in Benghazi, and that can be called a spontaneous uprising rather than what it really is. Those things are called one thing, but Harry Reid says where nothing is done, everything is done peaceful, domestic terrorist. Things are screwed up.
That's a mouthful right there. Domestic terrorists. Who are the domestic terrorists? Who is the enemy? That is a million-dollar question, but not for those who have been doing the research. It seems as if the Trading with the Enemies Act that was enacted back in 1902 at the inception of World War I, seems like that was put on steroids by none other than FDR when the president's powers concerning the Trading with the Enemies Act was beyond our shores. And FDR changed all that with his proclamations 2039 and 2040 and brought the ability to control and wage war against terrorists on shore. And the incremental use of that has never been more prevalent than it was when the Patriot Act was enacted. All of these things seem to go towards a pattern, and the pattern right now appears to be aimed at removing the very last thing that Americans have in order to change this government, and that is through through armed rebellion. So if they take the guns away, then they've taken the very last thing that Americans had to defend themselves out of their possession. How do you feel about that? Because we're that close right now.
Absolutely. You know, there's many groups out there that that are fighting, you know, tooth and nail against the encroachment that the government is trying to deal with, as whether it's the Second Amendment, First Amendment, 10th Amendment. Everything is being attacked, and it appears to be a purposeful effort, to destroy the Constitution. And if we don't stand up, if we don't make our voices known, if we don't put boots on the ground by the millions in Washington, D.C., and say, we want all the Constitution obeyed, every bit of it, to be honored, to be the law of the land. It's coming to the point where we see all this military equipment being assigned out to various elements across the nation. Well, you know, you wonder why that is. Why do they need these MRAP, these huge pieces of equipment that are used in Iraq? Why do they need those out in sheriff's offices and cities and across the nation? And why is the government buying all of this ammunition by the millions and millions of rounds? It's not a good indicator, I'll tell you. It's worrisome, and it's going to get worse. We've got to stand up against it. We're just, please, everybody out there, please try to get to Washington, D.C. on May the 16th. I know there's people coming that can't even afford to come. I've been told that I don't have the money, I can't get off work, but I'm going anyway. There's a man coming from Michigan in a wheelchair. He found somebody to help him along, but he's going to get down to Chicago or somewhere and get on the train and come to D.C. It's that critical. It's that important. It's so important that if there's any way possible, everyone that loves our nation, that loves our Constitution, that loves the freedom, and believes they want to leave that with their children, their grandchildren, their great-grandchildren, we have to try to be there. God's going to come. He's going to provide a solution up there. I don't know what it's going to be. I have no idea what it's going to be. But if we don't try, then it's going to get worse, because we've seen 5 years, everything going downhill. We've got to do something. We've got to stand up. If we don't, we're letting our children and our posterior just basically scramble for themselves, and we can do better.
Well said. Well said. Colonel Riley, can you give the listening audience, the viewing audience, a little background history of who you are and where you came from?
Sure, Carl. I grew up in West Virginia, went to high school there, met my wife there. We've been married for 50 years, have 3 children, grown children, and several grandchildren. Joined the military right out of high school, and served 8 years as an enlisted soldier. Then I was commissioned, and was fortunate enough to progress up through the ranks and retire as a colonel. I served in several commands, both in combat and in Europe and in the States. Had assignments again at company level, battalion level. I served in the Pentagon at the Deputy Chief of Staff for Intelligence, and also at the Chief of Staff of the Army, and also had several tours at the National Security Agency in Fort Meade. I would just mention that back in those days when I served at NSA, we were focused on the enemy, the Soviet Union, China, North Korea, those places. And now the thing has turned around and I'm the enemy. I mean, they're focusing on we the people. Everything we say, everything we write, every phone call we make is gathered. And that disturbs me because when I knew the National Security Agency, we were focused on the enemy without. And the FBI handled stuff within our nation. So that's pretty much it. I had a wonderful opportunity to serve our nation. Was fortunate enough to serve in combat and come home. So that's about what I'm about.
I want to thank you for your service to this country. I'm proud to be sitting next to you right now. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Carl.
What people need to understand are some very simple facts. At our founding, the structure was really laid forth that God created man, and in doing so, gave man certain unalienable rights. Those unalienable rights were never negotiable. They aren't negotiable to this day. But man turned around and created government underneath him. And that's to have an orderly society, as things should be. That government started at the local level. And then below, on the very bottom of that structure of power, was the government that was created by those assemblies of local area representatives to represent the entirety of the nation. Now, that has been the power structure. And if you look at counties across the nation, somewhere in there you'll see that they recognize the power structure being what it is. The creator, man, local, federal government. What makes anybody think that that which we created can flip and take control over the creators? But that's what we're seeing. And that's why this has got to stop, and it's got to stop now. The call out for those who have the ability and for those that don't to gather in numbers heretofore never seen in Washington has not been made lightly. It is that important that people show up. Colonel Riley knows this. I know this. Do you know this? Do you know how important this is? Do you know that your family, your children, your grandchildren, they are dependent upon what you do here and now? You can let it slip away or not. The choice is yours. But one man right here has decided to put his foot down, and he's asking for the help of his former military friends. He's asking for your help. I'm asking for your help. We need the numbers. Without the numbers, the change will not be effective, and all could possibly be lost. Do not let them get away with this. Stand with us. Stand with Colonel Riley. We will make sure that this is not in vain. Colonel Riley, thank you very much for this interview. I appreciate all that you've done. I want to say that when we get there, I've got your back. Thank you very much.
Carl, thank you very much for taking the time to allow us to talk and speak about the difficulties that we're facing. God help us do these things because there's no personal agendas involved here at all. Nobody's going to gain out of this except we, the people of the United States of America. I pray God's blessings on all of us and look forward to standing locking arms, shoulder to shoulder, with patriots by the millions in Washington, D.C., beginning May the 16th. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Colonel Riley. God bless you, and God bless America.
You're watching YLN TV.